Being a pro wrestling fan with a social conscience sucks. Pro wrestling is one of the most problematic forms of entertainment ever. It has a long, ugly history of racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, glorification of man-on-woman violence, xenophobia, so much xenophobia. And that's just the stuff you see on the actual shows. Behind the scenes, wrestlers have been mistreated by promoters and each other, denied fair pay, denied healthcare coverage, sexually harassed and abused, subjected to cruel pranks and hazing, forced to work injured, embarrassed and humiliated because the boss thinks it's funny. The stories of drug and alcohol abuse are the stuff of tragic legend, with scores of pro wrestlers dying long before their time. It's just not a very nice business. It's such a nasty business that I have often asked myself why I still bother to watch it. How can I justify being a fan of this? Wouldn't I be better off, less ethically compromised, certainly, if I swore off pro wrestling, much as I recently did Saturday Night Live? The answer is yeah, I would. And I have stopped watching some of it. I was a fan of the WWF/WWE for pretty much my entire life until 2016, when Vince McMahon supported Donald Trump, and then Trump actually got his wannabe dictator-ass elected president. I haven't watched a single second of WWE programming since Trump was elected. There were plenty of reasons for me to stop watching it before, but the election of Trump and the McMahon's shameless support of him was the last straw. I also recently stopped watching the revitalized NWA after the color commentator for their weekly YouTube show, veteran wrestling manager and promoter Jim Cornette, dusted off one of his favorite racist one-liners during his match commentary, and the line made it into the show even though it had been taped a month before it was initially released, meaning not only did Cornette think it was okay to say, but the producers of the show also thought it was okay until viewers heard it and complained, which is why I stopped watching the show even after Cornette resigned. That one actually hurt a little because the NWA YouTube show was really, really good. And when Cornette can keep a lid on his bullshit for 5 goddamn minutes at a stretch, he's a terrific commentator, but nope! Sorry, I'm out. Life's too short to put up with this shit. Lucky for me, there are other options. There's New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is awesome, maybe the best wrestling company in the world for many years now. I do love me some New Japan, but it has its own problems. Total lack of women wrestlers, for example. There's an amazing independent scene in Europe with companies like Over the Top Wrestling, an Irish promotion that's put on some really spectacular shows, and Pro Wrestling Eve, a British company centered on women's wrestling that likewise is awesome. Our indie scene here in the US isn't so bad either at the moment, with companies like Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, Dragon Gate USA, Shimmer, Full Impact Pro, House of Glory Wrestling, Beyond Wrestling, and more, all regularly putting on shows and doing well. A step above the indies, but a step below the big leagues, there's Major League Wrestling, which does a weekly TV show that I've liked on occasion, but have never been able to really get into. There's also Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, which I love for its old school, small scale studio wrestling feel. And there's Ring of Honor, which has had its ups and downs in terms of the quality of its wrestling product and things behind the scenes over the years. I like ROH, but it's currently owned by evil Trump-loving broadcast conglomerate Sinclair. I've never noticed any of the right-wing stuff leaking into the wrestling show, but still, ick. And there's also Impact Wrestling. So, if you didn't know before, now you probably get the reason why I'm reluctant to just permanently turn my back on pro wrestling. It's because I love this shit. I've loved it ever since I turned on the TV as a little kid and I saw Andre the Giant choking out Hulk Hogan. I went on to become a huge Hulkamaniac, but looking back with full knowledge of what a terrible human being Hulk Hogan is, I now realize I should have been rooting for Andre all along. But Despite all those options I just listed, until recently there wasn't really an alternative to WWE if I wanted to watch big-time, major league, weekly pro wrestling on TV. Maybe I'm old and out of touch, maybe I'm too nostalgic, but nothing quite compares to sitting down on the couch and watching wrestling at the same time every week. For years, it was every Saturday at 6:05 p.m. on TBS, or every Monday night on the USA Network. I'd usually watch Raw live and then catch the replay of Nitro. Thankfully, since October, I've had a new weekly pro wrestling destination, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. on TNT. The company is All Elite Wrestling, and the show is Dynamite. That's the name of the show, Dynamite. But also, it's Dynamite, like it's really good. And I'm a person from the 1930s who still talks like that. That wrestling show is Dynamite! What was I saying? All Elite Wrestling was officially founded last year, but its roots go back a few years before that. It's the creation of a group of wrestlers known as the Elite, Matt and Nick Jackson, Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, Adam Page, who became close friends after working together in Japan and Ring of Honor, and promoted their own independent show, All In 2018, which drew the largest live audience of any non-WWE wrestling show in North America in nearly 20 years. After All In, the Elite teamed up with Tony Khan, billionaire co-owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars and huge wrestling nerd, and created All Elite Wrestling. The company put on a few pay-per-views and live events, all of which got pretty good reviews, and in the fall of 2019, they got a weekly time slot on TNT. I've been a fan of AEW since the beginning. Since before the beginning, really. I ordered All In on pay-per-view and enjoyed the hell out of it for the most part. But the company has really been firing on all cylinders creatively since January. Before I get to that, though, I want to talk about why AEW is so much easier for a whiny, politically correct SJW snowflake like me to support. First and foremost, it just treats its wrestlers a hell of a lot better than WWE. Wrestlers who are under contract to AEW are considered employees of the company and are therefore entitled to employee benefits. And yes, for those of you who aren't as hip to the wrestling business as a know-it-all smart mark like me, that is atypical. Wrestlers under contract to WWE are considered independent contractors, which means they don't get full employee benefits, despite the fact that their contracts allow WWE to tell them where to go, how to dress, what to do on the show, and prevent them from working anywhere else without WWE's approval. Does that sound like it should be illegal? I think so too. Second, while Tony Khan is the CEO and ultimately has final say over the wrestling product, the wrestlers who work for AEW have a great deal more creative freedom than those in WWE. Matt and Nick Jackson, Kenny Omega, and Cody Rhodes are all executive vice presidents in the company, making it the only major wrestling promotion in the United States actually run by wrestlers. Individual matches are laid out by the wrestlers who are going to be in them. Promos, that is, interviews or segments where wrestlers are talking directly to the camera or the live audience about an upcoming match or taunting a rival, are crafted by the wrestlers themselves, not scripted and recited verbatim like in WWE. Wrestlers are also given the space to shape their personas and gimmicks for themselves. If AEW signs a popular wrestler from the independent scene, when that wrestler debuts on Dynamite, they'll probably be doing something very similar to what they were doing on the indies. One of the biggest success stories in indie wrestling of the past few years is Orange Cassidy, who wrestles in a t-shirt and jeans, and whose gimmick is that he's a great wrestler who is just too lazy most of the time to put forth an effort. So he starts out his matches with his hands in his pockets, he attacks his opponent with weak slaps and half-hearted kicks to the shins. It's the sort of out-of-the-box meta indie gimmick that would never make it on TV in the WWE. But when Orange Cassidy showed up in AEW last year, he was exactly the same as he'd always been. And lo and behold, he became an immediate fan favorite, and this past weekend on AEW's Revolution pay-per-view event, he had his first singles match in the company, and it was terrific, and the fans ate it up with a spoon. Who would have thought that letting popular wrestlers do the thing that made them popular to begin with would be a recipe for success? Third, the company has made a point of being inclusive. Its roster is racially diverse and features a large number of stars from outside the U.S. The Lucha Brothers, Pentagon Jr., and Rey Fenix are from Mexico, and they are one of the top tag teams in the entire world and are treated as such in AEW. The women's division includes some of the best Japanese women wrestlers in the world, like Hikaru Shida, Emi Sakura, and Yuka Sakazaki. The first AEW Women's World Champion, Riho, is also Japanese. She lost the title last month to Nyla Rose, who is Native American, Oneida specifically, and is also the first trans person to be signed to a contract by a major wrestling company. AEW is also the first pro wrestling company to make their events sensory inclusive. The company has made it clear that fans that don't share its dedication to diversity and inclusion aren't welcome at its events. Prominent AEW stars and executives have spoken out against bigotry and in defense of marginalized people on its roster, including Cody Rhodes, who recently sided with Nyla Rose after transphobic comments from retired pro wrestler Val Venus. Cody went on to promise that, as a result of his transphobic comments, Val shouldn't ever expect to work for AEW. None of that is to say AEW is perfect. Its roster is racially diverse, but I agree with fans who point out that it still lacks black and brown faces, especially up near the main event. There's also a lack of diversity behind the scenes. All 4 executive vice presidents are white men, and at the moment, all the agents are men. The women's division is also still very much a work in progress, the men getting far more time and attention on shows. And while treating contracted wrestlers as full-time employees rather than independent contractors is a very important step forward, there's still no labor union for pro wrestlers. And when the subject has been broached in interviews, AEW management has been reluctant to even discuss it. Despite those problems, it's just nice to have a wrestling company run by people who don't make a virtue out of being an ignorant piece of shit. People who are trying to do the right thing, trying to be inclusive, trying to escape the prejudice and inequality that has dragged pro wrestling down for so long. That's some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that sets AEW apart and allows me to support it with a mostly clear conscience. But I wouldn't be eager to support it in the first place if it wasn't putting on good shows. As I mentioned earlier, this past weekend, AEW put on a pay-per-view, Revolution. It might have been the best show they've ever done, and it exemplifies everything the company has been doing right lately. Nothing on the show was bad, but the 3 most heavily promoted matches lived up to the hype, and one of them over-delivered to a degree I honestly did not expect. I'll talk about that match last, since it was the best match on the show and the best AEW match to date, period. First, I'll talk about Cody Rhodes versus MJF. Cody Rhodes is my favorite wrestler. He's the son of Dusty Rhodes, one of the most popular and consequential wrestlers who ever lived, and there's a lot of the old man in him. Like Dusty, Cody has a knack for long-term storytelling. He knows how to build up to a big match to create that sense of anticipation in the audience. His feud with MJF began last November, when MJF, who up until then had been Cody's friend, turned on him and caused him to lose a match against world champion Chris Jericho. After that turn in November, Cody and MJF didn't wrestle each other, barely even touched each other, until the pay-per-view this past weekend. That's over 3 months of build-up before their first match, and that build-up never got boring, never went cold. That's quite an achievement considering most younger wrestling fans are accustomed to the WWE style of storytelling where there's a major event every month, sometimes more than one, and feuds between wrestlers are either rushed through and blown off quickly or dragged out long after most fans have lost interest. How'd Cody and MJF pull it off? First, each of them had a clear easy to grasp motivation. MJF turned on Cody because he thought Cody was holding him back and keeping him from being a bigger star. But MJF was also afraid of Cody and didn't actually want to wrestle him. Cody, on the other hand, wanted revenge against his former friend for betraying him and was willing to do anything to get MJF in the ring. The story then moved forward, driven by each wrestler's respective motivation. Cody made it clear that he would meet any condition MJF wanted in order to get a match with him, so MJF, being a classic scumbag heel, laid out his requirements. Cody couldn't touch him until the match. Cody had to fight MJF's hulking bodyguard Wardlow in a steel cage match, and Cody had to allow MJF to give him 10 lashes with a leather belt on TV. If Cody met all three conditions, then MJF would wrestle him at Revolution. Now the story had a clear path, a structure that allowed the audience to form specific expectations which could either be met or subverted. The physical requirements Cody had to satisfy, taking the 10 lashes and the cage match, were scheduled to take place several weeks apart and were heavily promoted as events unto themselves. The segment where MJF whipped Cody with the belt was played for maximum drama, with Cody struggling to bear up under the repeated lashes, selling the pain for all it was worth, and MJF repeatedly taunting Cody and pushing him to just quit, because remember, MJF didn't actually want to wrestle Cody. So his goal in whipping him wasn't just to hurt him, but to try and avoid the match altogether. Likewise, the cage match between Cody and Wardlow was treated as a big deal. It was Wardlow's first match in the company, it was the first cage match in the company, and it was the final obstacle Cody had to overcome in order to earn the right to get his hands on MJF. The cage match was short and simple, and Cody won after a spectacular dive onto Wardlow from the top of the cage. And then came their actual match at Revolution. MJF bailed out of the ring as soon as the opening bell sounded. He tried to avoid Cody, he cheated, he distracted the referee, he used Wardlow, who accompanied him to ringside, to gain unfair advantages. He threatened Cody's wife, Brandy, and manager Arn Anderson, who were both at ringside, to distract Cody. Despite these heel tactics, Cody got a measure of revenge on MJF, making him bleed, whipping him a few times with his weight belt to get a little bit of payback for the lashings he had to endure. But finally, Cody's lust for revenge got the better of him. He hit MJF with his finishing move, the Crossroads, but instead of pinning him, he picked MJF up and hit the move again. Still not satisfied, Cody picked him up a third time, but this time MJF managed to punch Cody while wearing a massive ring Wardlow had secretly slipped him earlier. Cody was knocked out, and MJF fell on top of him for the pin. MJF was so beat up he hardly seemed to know he had won, while Cody was despondent and limped out of the arena, telling fans along the way, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." The hero finally gets a shot at vengeance, but gets carried away, allowing the bad guy to cheat his way to a victory and slink away, forcing the hero to take stock and regroup. It's not just solid old-school pro wrestling booking, it's solid serialized storytelling. The match was satisfying but not conclusive, which allows the Cody vs. MJF feud to continue for a while longer without feeling stale or repetitive. The main event of Revolution was a match for the AEW World Championship between the challenger Jon Moxley, formerly known as Dean Ambrose in the WWE, and the champion, Le Champion, Chris Jericho. Moxley was undefeated in singles matches since arriving in AEW last summer, and Jericho, sensing that Moxley was the greatest threat to his reign as champion, at first sought to defuse that threat by befriending Moxley. He offered Moxley a spot as co-leader of his faction, the Inner Circle. He also offered to give Moxley a car, a brand new Ford GT. This was paced out to take place over several weeks of television, with Jericho first making the offer, then reiterating it and sweetening the deal, then Moxley declaring that he would announce his decision on the following episode of Dynamite, and then Moxley finally announcing that decision, which was, of course, to turn Jericho down. But not before faking him out then smashing a bottle of champagne over his head and stealing the keys to the GT. After that cemented Jericho and Moxley as bitter rivals, tensions between them continued to escalate. Jericho attacked Moxley, stabbing him in the eye with a spike, which forced Moxley to wear an eye patch for the next several weeks. Moxley won a match to earn a title shot against Jericho at Revolution. Moxley also stabbed Santana, a member of Jericho's Inner Circle faction, in the eye with the key to the GT, declaring an eye for an eye, which led to the two of them wrestling on a subsequent episode of Dynamite. Moxley defeated Santana. Moxley also defeated Jeff Cobb, an imposing and impressive wrestler who's been making his name in Japan and on the independent circuit for a while now, whom Jericho had brought in as a hired assassin to weaken Moxley before their match. Finally, on the last episode of Dynamite before the Revolution pay-per-view, Jericho and Moxley had a weigh-in, which disintegrated into a wild brawl before both of them had even been weighed. At Revolution, their match was hard-fought and dramatic. Moxley ultimately revealed that his eye had healed and he no longer needed the patch. Shortly thereafter, he hit Jericho with his finishing move, the Paradigm Shift, and won the title to the thunderous approval of the fans in attendance and me on my couch. Now, the last match I want to talk about was not the last match on the show. That was Moxley versus Jericho, or even the most hyped match on the show. That was probably Cody versus MJF. But it was the match with the most interesting build-up. And like I said, it was far and away the best match on the show. It was the match for the World Tag Team titles, with the champions Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page defending against their good friends in real life and within the fiction of the wrestling show, Nick and Matt Jackson, who are collectively known as the Young Bucks. The story leading into this match began back in the summer. Hangman Adam Page won a battle royal to earn the right to face Chris Jericho in the main event of the All Out pay-per-view to crown the first ever AEW World Champion. Page lost the match and suffered a serious blow to his self-confidence as a result. Going back even further, at the press conference in January of last year when All Elite Wrestling was officially announced, Adam Page had publicly declared that it was his goal to become the first AEW World Champion. He failed, and after that, he started to grow distant from the rest of the Elite. He told his friends that he didn't feel like he belonged, that he didn't think he could hang on their level, and that he wanted to leave the group. He also began conspicuously consuming alcohol at this point, taking cups of beer from fans at ringside and draining them all at once, turning up drunk as a guest color commentator, bitterly arguing with the Bucks and Kenny when they challenged him about it backstage. Despite wanting to distance himself from the group, Page found himself booked in tag team matches with Kenny as his partner, and they turned out to make a pretty good team. More than that, their act, with Kenny as the dazzling human highlight reel and Page as the resentful, reluctant underachiever, caught on with the fans and soon became one of the most entertaining and interesting aspects of the show. In January, Page and Omega won the World Tag Team titles. This became a natural source of tension between them and the Bucks, who, despite regularly being hyped as the greatest tag team in the world, had so far failed to win the World Tag Team titles in the company they helped to create. Thanks to a standout performance from Matt Jackson, the Bucks won a tag team battle royal on an episode of Dynamite to earn a title shot against Page and Omega at Revolution. The conflict between the two teams intensified as Page, still bitter over what he perceived as his status as the black sheep of the Elite, took every opportunity to taunt the Bucks over the fact that he and Omega won the tag titles before they did, while the Bucks made it clear that, friendship or not, they were going to win those titles at Revolution. This left Omega, who along with the Young Bucks had been one of the original members of the Elite, stuck in the middle, torn between his two best friends and his troubled tag team partner. After a build-up like that, by the time we got to the actual match, there was no telling what was going to happen. Which team was going to win? Was Page going to turn on Omega and burn his bridges with the Elite for good? Was Omega going to turn on the Bucks and solidify his partnership with Page? Was Omega going to choose his friendship with the Bucks and turn on Page? Would Omega and Page's miscommunication with each other cause one of them to lose the match and the titles? Would none of those things happen, and instead it would just be a clean match with a clear-cut winner and sportsmanlike handshakes when it was over? As it turned out, none of that happened. Page and Omega won the match and retained the titles. The Bucks didn't quite turn heel, but they worked much of the match as heels, with the idea being that they were so determined to win the match and the championships that they were willing to do whatever it took to win, even hurt their friends. The Bucks working as heels really helped the match. I'm not usually a huge fan of the Young Bucks in the ring. They tend to sprint through their matches and disregard psychology in favor of eye-popping high spots. But here, their willingness to use heel tactics gave their actions a focus and a clear motivation that they often lack. And the tension between Page and Omega as partners was used to great effect. As they get along, then they don't get along. Page does something vicious to one of the Bucks, which makes Omega uncomfortable. Then one of the Bucks does something vicious to Page, which pushes Omega back to his side. After the match is over, Omega and the Bucks reconcile and try to get Page to join them, but he still refuses, continues to stand apart from the group. Then there comes a moment when Omega is alone in the ring with his back turned to Page, and Page, who is standing on the entrance ramp outside the ring, puts down his championship belt and grips the top of the rope. And for a few seconds, all eyes are on him as it looks like he's about to flip into the ring and level Omega with a lariat just like the one he just used to win the match. But then Omega turns around and Page relaxes, beckons to his partner, holds the ropes open for him, and they leave together. What happens next? Well, who knows? But I'll tell you this, I'm eager to find out. And that might be the most crucial element to All Elite's creative success of late. It's something that was sorely missing from WWE's program when I stopped watching it over 3 years ago. Despite the level of talent on display, despite the occasional good or even great match, I never really cared about anything that happened. In AEW, it's just the opposite. Yes, the matches are good, and that's important, because if I didn't want to see good wrestling matches, I wouldn't be a wrestling fan. But whether the matches are 5-star classics or not, I'm invested in the outcome. I care about what happens. When Cody wrestled MJF, I wanted Cody to win, and I felt for him when he lost and seemed so disappointed in himself. When Moxley wrestled Jericho, I wanted Moxley to win and cheered when he did. Yes, it's wrestling. Yes, it's predetermined. It's not a legitimate competitive sport. It's fiction. It's theater. It's drama of a sort. And just like any other kind of drama, in order for it to work, you need to be invested in the characters and you need to care what happens to them next. Pro wrestling is not Shakespeare, but it is a form of storytelling, and when its stories are simple and told by performers who know how to captivate an audience with their athleticism and ability to cut a killer promo, it's one of my favorite things in the world. AEW is putting on the best pro wrestling shows in North America right now because it has remembered the essential formula for producing great pro wrestling. Give me a match between people who have a reason to fight, and give me a reason to care who wins. And if you can do that, while also being progressive and inclusive and treating both your wrestlers and your fans with respect, hell, I'm all in. Because that was the name of the